Episode 227 of The Horror Guys.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're going to talk about some horror movies that we saw.
How many?
We saw 6 in total.
Well,
4 are going to be really talked about here in depth, and 2 will be bonus ones that you can check out on the website.
which website? Where's the bonus ones at?
I believe that's horrorguys.com.
No.
Well, that's our main site. Okay, tell us which sub-site it's on.
Okay, the main site, horrorguys.com, has 4 movies and a short every week. Most of the time.
Yeah.
And the other 2 bonus reviews can be found at horrorbulletin.com. You can read them on the website there at horrorbulletin.com, or better still, sign up for the weekly newsletter, which is free.
And they'll come directly to you.
And you'll get 6 movies and a short every week in your email.
How awesome is that?
It's very convenient. And then you can just read them in your email browser on your phone or whatever. Well, what do we got this week?
Oh, well, we don't have anything brand new this time.
This is like 80s sci-fi week.
80s-ish and late 70s, yeah. We got Humanoids from the Deep, which has definitely got a science fiction bent to it. And then Saturn 3, which is hugely science fiction. Those are both from 1980. And we'll play with computers and try to summon the devil for Evilspeak from 1981. And aliens come to visit us in The Hidden from 1987.
No, it's not so hidden. You just spoiled it for us.
Well,
There's aliens.
There's aliens. And then as the bonus films, we got Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives from 1986.
That's like half the series now.
Yeah, we're getting there. And Magic from 1978. That was a cool one. I liked Magic a lot.
Anthony Hopkins and the other dummy.
Yeah. He's a ventriloquist who's kind of losing his mind.
Yeah, we mentioned horrorbulletin.com and, of course, horrorguys.com. The other one is horrorguysshop.com. And if you pop over there, you can pick up all our real books, plus a couple of free ones. We've got the Horror Bulletin Monthly. Issue number 20 is available. Absolutely for free. This month only. Normally it's $3.99 US dollars for the ebook, and I think $7.99 for the paperback most places. But this month, as a sort of a free sample, because we love you all so much.
Yes, we do.
We're giving you Horror Bulletin issue 20 for free. See what the thing's all about, and we hope you'll get them every month.
And that Halloween book is still free, too.
Halloween book is free. We've got Jess and the Werewolf, a fiction book. I think it was maybe one of the first books we ever released back in 2014. And it's free.
It is.
You don't have a comment on that one, do you?
It is. I was not aware of this.
It is. It's the first of a series.
It is.
Yeah.
Give the folks a little taste, and then they get hooked. And yeah, we know how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
But it's a story in itself too, though. It's like a first story. It's more than a chapter. It's a self-contained story.
It's a cliffhanger series.
But then it continues on to the other books. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, this week, today, right now, we have Humanoids from the Deep from 1980,
which was also known as Monster.
Which
was
a very bland and generic.
A very bland and simple title, which I can see why they changed.
Go watch that monster movie. You're not narrowing it down too much.
What monster movie is that? Yeah. This was directed by Barbara Peters and Jimmy T. Murakami. Written by Frank Arnold, Martin B. Cohen, and William Martin. Stars Doug McClure, Ann Turkle, and Vic Morrow. And there's a trailer on YouTube. It is a runtime of 1 hour and 20 minutes. Not that long.
Doug McClure. We recently watched him in 2 or 3 of those late Amicus films from 76 and 70. Journey to the Earth's Core.
The Land That Time Forgot.
Yeah.
And The People That Time Forgot.
He's in 2 out of 3 of those, I think.
Yeah.
And he was still, the action star, beating people up, kicking through walls and all that stuff. 4 years later, he was noticeably older here.
And
he didn't do so much this time.
Yeah, he did not. Yeah.
He aged quick in those 4 years.
Well, they could have youthed him up a bit for the others. But yeah, he was showing his age more for not that many years. Yeah. And this is a movie that Roger Corman produced and had a heavy hand in influencing. With the violence, the nudity.
You can tell.
The explosions, things that he pressed for.
He didn't direct, but he may as well have.
He dabbled a lot, yeah. So, spoiler free?
This is a decent monster movie with a very high body count, abundant gore, quite a bit of nudity, and a surprising number of explosions and fires.
Yeah, this town is really explosion prone.
It's nothing terribly serious. It's a fun movie, but it's an entertaining thing overall that holds up pretty well. I think neither of us had seen it in a very long time, if we had ever seen it.
I'd never seen it all the way through.
I don't remember if I have or not. I suspect I probably did, but I didn't remember it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Well, what happens?
Well, we open to a shot of underwater plants as the credits roll. Sort of a POV kind of thing. Jimmy and Tommy Hill drive up to the dock and talk to the fishermen there. And they all whine about the fishery that might open next year.
They want our jobs.
Yeah. Later, a couple of fishermen get something big out in the water, but their winch runs out of gas. And we see the claws of the monster in the net, but it's too heavy and they can't get it up because the winch isn't working right and they can't haul it. And it's a comedy of misadventures until it isn't funny anymore and the boat explodes in a rather excessive way, killing all of them.
Everything explodes excessively in this.
So you know this movie is serious when they kill a kid right off the bat.
Yep, he's the first one killed.
Yeah, well, the boat of people. There was a couple other guys too there, but yeah. And Jimmy and Tommy watch from the distance through binoculars. Well, the sheriff talks to Jim. He thinks the explosion may have been foul play. It wasn't really. It was just a bunch of
idiots.
Bunch of idiots. Yeah. Well, the monster outside kills Jim's dog. And the next morning they find every dog in town dead except for the one belonging to the town's Indian. And the fisherman thinks that's suspicious.
And this is the town's Native American guy, and they specifically very much call him an Indian.
Yeah,
that wasn't Kevin misspeaking.
That wasn't, yeah.
The times.
They are politically correct as the time was, or politically incorrect as the time was. Yeah, they refer to the Indians, the Indian.
And of course, when bad things happen to all the dogs in town, they blame the Injun. Yeah, it must be him, the outsider.
Yeah, it's that
Let's
kind of
get
town.
him.
Yeah. Well, the mayor calls a town meeting for the big festival. The executives from the cannery are all visiting, and he's brought in a scientist, Dr. Susan Drake. And her claim is to be able to grow salmon bigger, stronger, and more plentiful than before. Johnny Eagle comes into the meeting. Someone finally killed his dog, too. It was Slattery, who's been pushing for the cannery. And this all devolves into a fist fight. Well, the next morning, Slattery goes off into the woods and spies on the Indians who are planning a legal case to stop the cannery. And he then goes back to town, tells his goons that they need to solve their own problems. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean. Well, elsewhere, people are making out on the beach. And Jim and Dr. Susan are out on his boat. They almost catch something big, but it gets away. Susan does some underdeveloped photos of it. This was back in the days when you had to... She takes a picture, and then there's like film in the camera. And you have to wait and develop it before you can see the picture. It was so archaic back then.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, down on the beach, something rips Jerry's face off and then drags away Linda, his girlfriend. We see the horrible green monster pull off her clothes and maybe rape her. Another couple is attacked that night, and the man is killed and the girl taken. Tommy and his girlfriend go to Johnny Eagle's place for dinner, but Slattery and his goons arrive outside in the dark. They firebomb the place, which, of course, explodes dramatically.
I think Johnny Two Eagles there had cans of gas stored everywhere.
Yeah,
as one does.
Yeah, everywhere on the compound. Yeah, as Tommy shoots at the baddies, a monster comes out of the water and grabs him. Johnny shoots the thing, but Tommy's in really bad shape. But they do have eyewitnesses.
They all see it.
The creature now. Yeah. Though the next morning, all the men talk about what happened last night. Johnny brings in Tommy's body, and the sheriff says he's got some explaining to do. Susan listens to Tommy's story, and she believes him. Jim stands up for Johnny, and he, along with Susan, go off to look for the creatures, while everybody else in town looks for all the missing teenagers. Susan thinks they are nocturnal predators, so it's probably safe in the daytime.
Probably.
They mostly come out at night, mostly. Yeah. They start looking in all the little caves along the beach, and they do soon find one of the creatures. And they find Peggy, and she's definitely not dead. Not completely. Well, they take some of the creatures' bodies back to the lab for examination. But the cannery people are clearly trying to cover it up. They think Susan's theories are incorrect, but the proof is right there in front of them. She tells about DNA 5, which speeds up evolution and growth. That was the salmon growth compound she was talking about before.
It's not just salmon anymore.
Yeah, the problem is that some of the experimental salmon escaped into the ocean, and these things ate the salmon, which probably accelerated the evolution of those creatures.
What happens if a human eats that salmon? We never find out.
We don't get that far, no. Well, the big salmon festival is underway, and the DJ keeps pronouncing it Salman.
Welcome to the Salman Festival.
The Salman Festival. Yeah. Well, most of the town is at the big nighttime celebration.
For the Salman Festival.
Nighttime celebration, yes. It's a big old carnival. They got rides and fair type stuff. Well, the mayor isn't really excited by any of this, but it's all needed for the town. It's good for the economy, good for morale. Jim returns with one of the creature's bodies, and suddenly several live ones break through the boardwalk. It's a pandemonium mess, and lots of people die. Yeah, that's quite graphic, and it goes on for quite a while. Well, Jim and Susan, for some reason, spray the whole harbor with gasoline and ignite it.
All the monsters are on land chasing people around, so let's set the water on fire.
And just the surface of the water, the creatures can go underwater. They wouldn't be bothered by a fire.
They can stay down there as long as they want.
Yeah, but it looked cool. Slattery is attacked by one of the creatures, but is saved by Johnny Eagle.
Well, comeuppance time.
Yep. Meanwhile, we see the creatures are stalking outside Jim and Carol's house. And we also see that she has one of the most excessively effective lock doors ever, door locks, but they come in through the windows.
Oops.
Smash, yeah. And Carol goes full psycho on the thing. Yeah, she's
good with a knife.
She's a badass, yeah. The sun comes up and the town is a disaster. Sheriff's in a daze, and he says Dr. Susan went back to her lab. And back in the lab, the survivor Peggy is giving birth. And Dr. Susan is delivering the baby, which turns out to be pretty much a copy of the chest burster scene from Alien.
Wow. Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
It was very reminiscent of it, yeah. Yeah, they clearly borrowed quote from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see here. They killed a dog and a kid in the first 10 minutes.
Lots
so you
of
know you're in
dogs.
for something special.
Yeah, and I just won lots of dogs.
Every dog in town, yes.
Yeah,
Does the dog live?
No. None of them.
I don't think you actually see any of the dogs being killed, do you?
We see the one that Johnny Eagle carries in dead.
Yeah. But, I mean...
No, we don't see the actual act of a dog being killed, no.
Things blow up really spectacularly and very easily in this town. And what was the point of igniting the water in the harbor when the monsters were killing everyone on land?
Because Roger Corman said, you know what would look really cool?
More fire.
Yeah.
Well, most of the actors thought they were doing a serious science fiction film with some basis in reality. By the time producer Roger Corman got finished, they were all embarrassed by the excessive nudity, and the director even asked to have her name removed from the credits. Alan Smithy time.
Yeah, later she did acknowledge that, yeah, that was a pretty good movie. I mean, years later, she
Well, I mean, nobody's going to say it's great quality, but it is very entertaining.
It's entertaining, yeah.
Yeah, and it is one of the first films to work with the idea of genetic modifications.
Mm-hmm.
The creatures are obviously men in rubber suits, but they're really good rubber suits and are surprisingly effective here.
Yeah, they were.
There's lots of gore and carnage, and we do get to see a lot of the creatures in this one. It's basically a creature feature with a sort of a sci-fi premise, but it's surprisingly good for as old as it is.
Yeah, if you like a creature feature, this is up your alley.
We
Yeah,
both recommend this one for sure.
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Saturn 3 from 1980.
But we had to have watched Saturn 1 and 2 first, right?
There is no Saturn 1 and 2.
Oh, it means something else. Okay.
It does.
Directed by Stanley Donen and John Barry. Written by Martin Amis and John Barry. Stars Farrah Fawcett. Well, okay then.
Yeah.
That's all we need to know. Kirk Douglas, who is pushing 70.
Well,
as the love interest.
He was substantially older than Farrah. Yeah.
He was in his later 60s. He was actually quite a bit older than her.
Mm-hmm. And they are a romantic couple in this. So, yeah.
And Harvey Keitel. And if you want to guess which one of them is topless most in this film, you'd probably be wrong. 1 hour, 28 minutes, trailer
Yeah,
in the
I
show
don't think
notes.
Harvey Keitel took his pants off once in this one.
That's not what I meant.
Okay. There's a lot of Harvey Keitel movies where he does the full frontal nudity.
Okay.
And he does not in this one. Yeah. Farrah, however.
She doesn't either.
Well,
maybe a little bit.
a little.
Kirk Douglas runs around shirtless through half the movie.
Yeah, he shows more skin than
wrinkled
anybody.
old blobbers blabbing around. You know.
He's not that bad.
You don't want to see your blobbers blabbing. All right, well, let's see. Spoiler free, what happens?
The sets are the standout in this one. And the robots are pretty cool and expensive and the best they could do at the time. The main robot was especially expensive, yeah. All the effects are quite good, and the acting is hit and miss, and so is the script. But overall, it's more entertaining than not. It's far from a perfect film, but I almost think of it as a guilty pleasure movie.
I just feel guilty.
I enjoy it more than I should, I feel like.
I think you do too.
Because I watch it and think, boy, this is kind of bad, but yet I'm kind of loving it.
It's an interesting story, an interesting idea, and really cool sets, and it's just everything else is just terrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's still so good.
We have a difference on this one.
Uh-huh.
It's not the worst movie I've ever seen.
No.
It's probably the worst movie we saw this week.
We'll see.
Well, an enormous spaceship approaches Saturn. We cut to various scenes of sci-fi sets as many people talk over each other. A little ship is loaded for launch, and Captain James rushes to report. We hear him talk to Benson, who failed his mental stability test. James suggests that he try not to appeal it, because he really is unstable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Benson straps himself in and opens an airlock, sucking James right out while being shredded at the same time. And why would they have an open airlock in the locker room?
That was such a weird design. Yeah, and a chair specifically designed for that, because, you strap yourself into this wall chair, and there's controls right across from you, where you can open the airlock. Why would
It's a locker room.
It's a locker room. But anyway, it got rid of his competition.
Yeah, Benson then puts on the helmet and takes James's place on the launch.
And it's a full face helmet. You can't see their face at all when they're fully suited up, so he can take the guy's place and nobody realizes it.
Very convenient.
Yes.
Well, the launch proceeds as scheduled on the way to Saturn III. Well, Saturn III is an experimental food research station located on one of the moons of Saturn. Benson, who replaced James, unloads his luggage and carries it inside, where everyone removes their masks. And no one ever figures out that he switched places.
No.
The dead body just floated off into space and nobody noticed. Nobody ever asked what happened to Benson.
Yeah. And, no alarms or anything went off when, the airlock was open.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be an alarm.
I think you mentioned that later, too. Yeah.
Okay, so on the Saturn III, we have Benson, Major Adam, and Alex.
And Adam and Alex don't know who to expect or anything, so there's nothing unusual that Benson.
Oh, they call him
showed
Major
up.
James a couple of times.
Oh,
they know who he's supposed to
think,
be.
Oh, they do think it's supposed to be.
And they think
Major
it's him
James.
all along. They never find out he's a fake.
Yeah, I know. I realized that, but I didn't know they knew his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they knew the other guy's name. They don't know his name. He's Benson, really.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I missed that.
Well, she says that they hardly ever get visitors, especially from Earth. The entire solar system is now colonized, and Alex has never been to Earth. They're in eclipse behind Saturn, so there's a communications blackout that will last 22 days. So even if they do find out, nobody's going to tell.
Uh-huh.
Benson says they're behind schedule with their work, and they need help, which he has brought. Adam and Alex are clearly an item, showering together. Benson gives Alex some blue dreamers, some special sleeping pills. But Adam doesn't approve of the drug use, and she wants to try one together. He has to remind her to wear clothes because, hey, we've got a guest now.
Oh, yeah.
Benson sees the pet dog and thinks it looks tasty. Benson is unhappy that Alex isn't available for sex, as she's exclusive with Adam, which is not how things are done on Earth anymore. He watches them have sex on their video camera, and the next day, he's after her again. I'd like your body. I'd like to use it. Subtle.
He just
very subtle.
Comes right out and says it. Yeah.
Benson opens the weird cylinder he's brought, and it's full of lab-grown brains for a robot, but it's not programmed yet.
Yeah, it's fresh brain tissue without any thought yet.
Once it's fully programmed, either Adam or Alex will be irrelevant. Even in the future, they're losing their jobs to the machines.
Yep, they are.
Adam says he's getting close to retirement, but he's not obsolete yet. Adam suggests flushing Benson into space, but Alex thinks that's just mean.
Yeah.
Of course, he was right.
Yeah.
Benson assembles the huge robot without a brain inside. Adam and Alex are surprised that it's finished so soon, and the thing is called Hector, and he's not quite ready for prime time. Benson plugs his mind into the brain to train the robot directly, but we've already seen how stable he is.
Yeah, that's not a good. That's good. That's not good. That's bad. That's very bad.
Adam plays chess with Hector, and Adam wins. Hector crushes the chess pieces.
So he needs a little fine tuning yet.
Adam thinks it's all very suspicious, but Alex argues that Benson has been carefully selected and trained, so it must all be safe.
Yeah, it must be okay.
Alex gets a rock chip in her eye, and Benson holds her still while Hector reaches in with tweezers and pulls it out. It looks scary, but it works out fine. This big robot is a shaky, twitchy mess. I mean, it wobbles when it walks, and
it doesn't look that steady.
Tweezers in the eye is not something I'd want to try.
Yet it does precisely do that. So yeah.
I'm today. He's yesterday. Don't you like me? Benson asks again.
He's still pushing for it.
And all this time, we should probably talk about his voice.
Yeah.
Harvey Keitel has this
Brooklyn
built-in
kind of
Brooklyn accent that you've heard in everything he's ever done.
They didn't like that, so they dubbed him.
They didn't like that, and he wouldn't fake any other kind of accent, so they dubbed him with this other guy.
Yeah, either wouldn't or couldn't.
And the other guy's not very good.
It's a very robotic voice.
Yes, and it sounds totally artificial. It's weird
Yeah.
how bad his voice is.
The words match the lips, but yeah, it sounds
even if you don't know
odd.
what Harvey Keitel sounds like, it sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Well, Benson doesn't understand why Hector won't talk. I am not malfunctioning. You are, says Hector by text. Hector then kills the dog and picks up Alex, refusing to put her down until she asks it to. Benson admits that Hector wants her too now. He learned that from him. Hector turns on Benson, but Adam rescues him.
And then they, all flee and lock him in the greenhouse, and Hector's just smashing things up. And yeah, now what do we do? And I thought that was kind of a comedic, moment, because Benson is way over his head now. And Adam's like, how do we stop this? And they go, I don't know. He's like, don't.
What am I supposed to be, the specialist?
Yeah, the real guy would be okay at this point.
Adam asks Benson what they can do as Hector starts smashing things up, but Benson doesn't really know because he's not really the guy trained for the job. They hope to wait until the power reserves run out, but Hector has learned to recharge himself. Adam causes a power surge while he's plugged in, which shorts out Hector, and they remove his brain. Benson dismantles Hector, but during the night, Hector controls the mindless robot in the lab to reassemble himself.
Yeah,
That's not supposed to happen.
There's several little robots that are helper bots, and yeah, he's able to put himself back together because he's modular. He goes back together easy.
He does.
Yeah.
Benson says he's leaving, and he's taking Alex with him. Adam takes offense to that, and the two men fight. Adam wins easily, but Benson whacks him over the head. Before Benson can do anything to Alex, Hector shows up and cuts Benson's hand off.
Ouch.
And worse.
Oh, yeah.
There's a great deal of running around and hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Adam sets a trap for Hector, but Hector avoids it until they push him into the liquid nitrogen. That only slows him down.
And luckily, there was a handy pit of liquid nitrogen right there.
Of course there is.
Yeah,
There always is.
Of course,
Well, Adam and Alex suit up and run out to Benson's spaceship, but it explodes before they can get there. Hector, yeah, that's a good one. Hector remotely detonated it. Benson calls for a meeting. It's really just Hector, though, using Benson's severed head.
Ew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the eclipse finally ends, and another Earth ship makes a flyby to do a wellness check on them. Adam wakes up, and now he's got one of Hector's ports installed on the back of his head. We see that Hector can speak in both Adam and Alex's voices as he lies to the men on the ship and sends them away, saying everything is just fine.
Nothing to see here. Yeah.
Adam wires himself up with explosives and reports to the robot. He grabs Hector and jumps into the liquid nitrogen pit as he sets off the explosives. Bits and pieces fly everywhere.
Very dramatically.
We then cut to a massive starliner, and we see Alex on board, finally going to Earth for the first time. Well, happy ending for one of the three characters.
Mm-hmm. I guess nobody is on Saturn 3 anymore. Or maybe they sent different crew, different. Because it was a food experimentation. They were working on different ways to grow more and better food. They probably sent more scientists.
Probably did.
Yeah.
Well, the opening scene with the giant ship couldn't be more of a ripoff of Star Wars Star Destroyer intro scene.
Mm-hmm.
You start
Very
out in
much
space
so.
and you see this tiny little tip, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. Well, Benson's murder of James didn't set off any alarms at the space station. You can't even open the back door of Walmart without setting off alarms.
Yeah, that was hard to believe. Yeah.
Well, for the age of the film, the space effects are really pretty good. The indoor sets, are really large and well done, and some of the largest ever constructed at the time. The robot, which costs $1 million actual dollars to build, isn't that impressive, but it does the job here.
It does, yeah.
Harvey Keitel had a strong accent that they didn't like, so all lines are dubbed, which makes him sound stilted and almost robotic. He's definitely off.
Mm-hmm. It's odd.
But he does make Earth sound like a pretty awful place to be. There's an awful lot of running around in those expensive corridors. It looks good, but the story is stretched out, the pacing is kind of awful, and the acting is somewhere between mediocre and atrocious.
And
I'd say 70% of that is Harvey Keitel.
And yet I was so entertained watching it.
Well, Farrah Fawcett's not really known for her acting ability, especially early on. And yeah, Kirk Douglas could act okay, but he was probably the least of the three characters.
Yeah, I liked it. I was still entertained.
Okay. Which takes us to our short film this week. What do we got?
Polaroid, a brand new one, which was directed and written by Alex Magana.
We've done others by him. I don't know why he shows up in our YouTube feed so often, but he does. He must make a lot of these things.
Stars Elizabeth Lee, Mila Benskin, and Helena Garassi. Runtime is 9 minutes and 13 seconds, and it's free to watch on YouTube.
What happens?
Barbara goes to visit her dead mother's grave. She pulls out a sandwich and eats it there as something approaches from behind. Oh, no, wait, it's just her friend Tiffany, who's brought Barbara her photography homework, which includes an old-style Polaroid camera, and she's supposed to take pictures with this. So she takes a picture right there in the cemetery.
Are Polaroid cameras
What could
even still
happen?
sold? Would they be teaching that in photography classes?
I thought I heard that Polaroid is no longer making it themselves, but there are knockoffs.
Those were kind of obsolete 30 years ago.
There's knockoff companies making them still.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Well, what else happens?
Well, first off, Polaroids don't develop anywhere near that fast, but no one under the age of 40 would probably know that. And
She takes a picture, she shakes it, and there it is.
But then again, it would be a really slow video if it were time accurate. And also add that shaking them doesn't and never has made them develop faster.
But everybody does that.
But it does for this, for the benefit of this short film. It does. It's well paced. It looks really good, and it all happens in the bright daylight, which kind of makes it even creepier.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, we both liked it.
Yeah, it's a good
Even
one.
though it's technically... Polaroids aren't like that anymore.
Polaroids? Yeah.
All right, well, next up we've got Evilspeak from 1981, one of my guilty pleasures.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Eric Weston, written by Joseph Garofalo and Eric Weston, stars Clint Howard, R.G. Armstrong, and Joe Cortese. R.G. Armstrong plays Sarge, the drunken janitor who gets like 6 words and 2 scenes, and he's second billed in this.
It's amazing.
Got a good agent.
Mm-hmm.
Hour and 27 minutes, trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. What's it about?
Well, it's kind of dated and hokey around the edges, but entertaining at its core. The technology and whole vibe are very 80s, which really makes it kind of fun.
Yeah, this was like early 80s, before I had a computer and I wanted one so badly, and they were so expensive my parents wouldn't get me one.
Well, and they kind of cheat in this too, because it does things that computers could not do at the time as far as graphics.
But nobody had a computer at home, so nobody
And
really
so
knew
nobody
that.
really knew, yeah. So
You can
so
do
it's
that
cool.
with a computer?
Well,
I want one even more.
yeah, which might have contributed a little to the spread of home computers.
It did for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to summon demons.
They made Clint Howard pay for his own toupee. That's said in trivia about this.
Well, he was going bald at like 12, wasn't he?
He went bald really early. Yeah, and he's hairpiecing it in this. It looks good.
No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't. It's pretty obvious it's a
well,
hairpiece.
Okay, all right. I thought it looked okay. If you know, yeah, but if you didn't know, maybe
You
not.
can almost always tell even today, unless it's like a Hollywood movie with a pro putting it on for you.
And even then, sometimes.
Average people, you can almost always tell a toupee.
Yeah. Anyway, they made him pay for it.
And if you're
so
wearing a
for some
toupee,
reason,
yes, I'm
yeah,
talking to you. We can tell.
quite often.
All right. Well, we watch as a group of conquistadors disembarks from their ship. The priest says that Lorenzo Esteban is banished from Spain and condemned to suffer eternal damnation. Later, we see Esteban with a group of his cultists doing dark rituals and human sacrifice. We cut to the present, where Stanley Coopersmith causes the team to lose yet another soccer game for West Andover Military Academy. Bubba is the school bully, and he hates Stanley. The coach suggests to Bubba that if Coopersmith got hurt, they might not lose so many games.
Wink, wink.
He has to
nudge,
let him
nudge.
play, but if he's wounded, he can't do it.
Yeah, he's not very athletic, but he's required, the coach is, to let them all play.
Stanley's an orphan, and he's only there because of government assistance, which is another reason he's so disliked. Everyone else is rich. Well, Stanley goes to church to find Reverend Jameson and goes down to the old basement underneath. He runs into creepy old Sarge, who's a drunk and also hates Stanley. Actually, everyone hates Stanley.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this one.
Jameson tells Bubba's mother, a big donor, about the history of the old church, which was founded by Father Esteban a long time ago. Before being executed, Esteban vowed to return and get his revenge. And this is something that the priest knows, and he's telling donors because it's such a cool story.
Yeah,
We have the Church of the Demonic Sacrificial
Yeah.
Monster Guy who was executed.
Built
But it's
on-
pretty cool,
built on
huh?
the site. Isn't that cool? And I'll give us some money to help run it, huh?
Well, Stanley's been assigned to work detail to clean out the basement of the ancient church, and he finds a secret room down there, and inside that, he finds an old tomb with many old books. Stanley has a nightmare about Satanists and is late for his Latin class. Latin final exams are coming up soon, and Stanley mentions using a computer to make sure his project is accurate. That night, working on his computer, Stanley types in some of the Latin from his book. It translates Esteban's words for him, and it mostly confirms what Father Jameson said earlier. Esteban will return.
I'll be back.
The school's headmaster chews out Stanley for being bullied and unconfident.
You know, that headmaster guy, he was in Harold and Maude. He is just so typecast as a minor authority
Uptight.
figure. Tends to be military. You know, this is not his first rodeo in this kind of role.
And he usually spanks Stanley with his writing crop. But the colonel's secretary finds Stanley's book.
If you got a riding crop, you might as well use it on the students.
They don't have horses here. Why would you have a riding crop?
Because it's part of his thing.
I want a riding crop now.
His military garb. He's got a riding
Smack.
crop, yeah.
Well, the colonel's secretary tries to read the book while he's working, and she's almost mauled by pigs. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bullies sabotage Stanley's homework project, and he thinks they also took his book.
Yeah, well, Stanley actually accidentally left it
In the office, yes.
there, and the secretary finds it. And it's later when Stanley is working on the farm area where she reads the book and it fires up the pigs for some reason. And
Yeah.
they almost get him.
Bubba denies having the book, and he takes the whole computer system, an old Apple II, down to the dungeon to continue his translation work.
And boy, that was big and clunky back then.
Oh, yeah. There's no laptop.
Yeah.
It gives him all the ingredients to perform a black mass, which he soon attempts. Jake, the cook in the mess hall, is nice to Stanley and shows him his dog, who just had puppies.
Yeah, the one person in this movie who's actually nice to Stanley.
And he gives one of the puppies to Stanley. Yay! Yay, Stanley's happy.
Yay.
Movie's over.
No.
Well, the black mask can't be completed without blood and some consecrated host. He goes to steal some host from the church, but he just can't bring himself to do it because that would be bad.
The little wafer things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He leaves and is immediately attacked by a student wearing a scary mask. And he's knocked out. He wakes up and thinks the spell worked. Meanwhile, the computer does some weird stuff before it shuts itself off. And Apple IIs couldn't do that because they couldn't shut themselves off like modern computers. So, magic.
This one's been possessed, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing I don't believe about this film.
Okay.
Well, he goes back to the dungeon to feed his puppy, but Sarge hears him and catches him down there. When Sarge goes after the puppy, Stanley hits him. The two fight, but the computer activates and makes Sarge's head spin around, killing him. Stanley finds an even more secret room behind the secret room. Secret room.
Secret. Yeah.
And this one's full of skeletons. He stashes Sarge's body in there.
Yeah, one more won't matter.
Elsewhere, the Colonel's secretary, who still has Stanley's book, goes home with it. Since she's the only woman in the movie, we get a naked shower scene. Yeah, I guess it had to happen.
Well, there are some cheerleaders later. But
they're not real characters.
She's the only female character.
That soon gets interrupted when she's eaten by pigs. She got a thing for pigs.
Came full circle, yeah.
Yeah, well, the book on the table in the next room then simply vanishes. Tonight's the big pep rally before the big game tomorrow, and Bubba and the guys start picking on Stanley, and they threaten his little dog.
Don't threaten the dog.
The Colonel only sees Stanley and throws him off the team.
Just like John Wick. Don't threaten the dog.
Yeah, and don't mess with people's dogs.
Yeah.
That never goes well.
No.
Well, the bad guys go to check out Sarge's place down in the basement, and they find Stanley's secret place where they hear his dog barking. They find the dog, the computer, and all the books. Bubba sacrifices the little dog, and the computer screen goes blank.
The computer had been asking for blood.
It had.
Yeah.
Stanley comes back to the dungeon, and he knows exactly what's happened. And the computer then signals that it needs human blood.
More.
The puppy blood isn't good enough.
He's just not doing the trick. Yeah.
Well, the Latin teacher watches as Stanley steals the consecrated host from the church, and he's going to finish the ritual as instructed. The teacher follows him down into the secret dungeon, arriving at just the wrong moment. Oh, finally, Stanley has human blood to offer.
There you go.
Upstairs, Reverend Jameson is giving a pre-game sermon to all the cadets. Esteban then possesses Stanley. They see the Jesus statue bleeding and they all freak out, except for Jameson, who gets a nail in his forehead. Thunk. Naturally, the doors won't open, and the computer does a graphic show that computers of the time weren't capable of actually doing.
And Stanley goes full carry on them.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
He floats up out of the... I've actually heard this described compared to Carrie.
Uh-huh.
It's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, they're all trapped and he kills them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stanley floats up out of a hole in the floor with a sword. The Colonel orders Stanley to stop this, but then the Colonel loses his head.
Yep.
The pigs swarm in and kill some of the guys, while others burn in the rapidly spreading fire. A few holdovers are simply beheaded by Stanley's sword. Only Bubba makes it down to the dungeon, but he's then killed by the reanimated corpse of Sarge, and we get a message on the computer screen. Suffering from shock and catatonic withdrawal, attributed to having witnessed the fiery death of his dear friends and teachers, Stanley Coopersmith, the sole survivor of the tragic accident, was admitted to Sunnydale Asylum. He remains there still. So, happy ending for Stanley.
And we get one more computer message that says, I, Stanley Coopersmith, will return.
There were no sequels.
But there certainly could have been.
Well, it's a whole movie centered around what would later be Google Translate.
Kinda.
Type in your Latin and things happen.
Uh-huh.
Well, the sets are not particularly good. The special effects are pretty awful, too. The technology is 30 years out of date. Otherwise, it's pretty entertaining, and the addition of technology to Satanism is kind of an interesting idea.
That 30 years out of date is incorrect. That's like 53 years now. 50
what year was
now.
this?
Yeah.
80-something?
Yeah, we need to correct that. That
Okay.
was 50 years out of date.
No, it hadn't been 50 years since 80.
40 years.
Math.
Math is hard.
Math.
Okay, math, yes. 40 years.
Okay, well, anyway, otherwise it is pretty entertaining, and the additional technology to Satanism is an interesting idea. The gore is good, and no one can say that these guys didn't all deserve what they got.
Yeah, they kind of had it coming to them.
Yeah, it's dated, but it's very good otherwise.
Pretty good.
This is one of my guilty pleasures, and
Okay.
Kevin's like, eh.
Yeah, not as much for me.
We're opposing.
I'm more of a Saturn 3 kind of guy.
So weigh in on us. Send us an email. Send us a Twitter. What do you like better, Saturn 3 or Evilspeak?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to our fourth film this week, 1987's The Hidden.
I loved this when it came out, and I loved it still.
I'm middle of the road on this one. I can bear it, but it's not one of my favorites.
Huh.
Directed by Jack Shoulder, written by Jim Kauf, stars Kyle MacLachlan, Michael Nouri, and Claudia Christian. Hour and 37 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free. This is a heavy science fiction cop action drama, but it has enough body snatching and body horror elements to easily qualify it for horror. Overall, it's a good story that's well made. Yeah, it's a cop story until the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, heavily cop. Yeah. Well, we get a grainy black and white security footage from a bank as credits roll. There's a man who walks in, looks around carefully, and then he pulls out a shotgun and starts blasting. He stops, looks right into the camera, and then smiles before shooting it. And the man gets out into a sports car and speeds away with heavy metal music playing. And the police are right behind him, and he kind of seems like he's enjoying the chase. There's mayhem and damage as he causes other crashes and hits people. Tom Beck, a detective, is already looking for the man, whose name is Jack DeVries. He soon arrives at a massive roadblock, gets shot many more times, and gets blown up. And somehow they take him alive. But barely. He's on a ventilator in the hospital, and he's not expected to live. Detective Willis rattles off just how many crimes DeVries was guilty of, much more than what we just saw.
We just saw the end of the story.
Yeah, he's been at it a while. And at the police station, Lloyd Gallagher from the FBI comes to the police chief to be assigned a local cop as a partner. He's looking for DeVries as well, and he wasn't aware the man had been captured. Hot diggity. Well, meanwhile, at the hospital, the supposedly nearly dead DeVries gets up and walks over to the guy next to him in the next bed, and some kind of tentacle slug crawls out of his mouth and into that other guy. It's pretty big. Well, the new guy, Jonathan Miller, is said to be a very kind and honest man who is so terminally ill that he was expected to never leave the hospital alive, who is currently out violently robbing a record store.
That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, he got up, walked right out, and DeVries is there dead, as far as they can know, as far as they know. Well, Gallagher then comes to Beck wanting to find Miller now. That's strange because Miller has no record at all. Beck gets the call from the record store and finds out that Miller was the guy who did it. And why would he suddenly turn bad? Oh, FBI guy Gallagher is vague about what's going on, but he says the criminal he's chasing assumes other people's identities.
There's more to it than that, obviously.
Yeah. Well, Miller goes into a diner. He watches Senator Holt on TV, and he's very interested. Miller sees a sports car that he likes, tries chasing it on foot. But Miller's got a bad heart and bad stomach and some real physical problems that slow him down. But he does eventually get the car, which is...
Yeah, he may have an alien inside
watch.
him, but it's still a defective body.
Yeah, that's breaking down and. Well, Gallagher tells Beck that the perpetrator killed his partner, and Beck invites him over for dinner. Gallagher is kind of strange, and he eats strangely, and he does everything strangely. He's just a little off. And he also mentions the perpetrator killed his wife and daughter, so he really wants this person. Meanwhile, Miller goes to a strip club, and we can see that he's bleeding. His body's falling apart. The police spot his stolen car out in front, and they call Beck. Miller goes into the dressing room and harasses Brenda, one of the strippers. And we soon see his bug has transferred into Brenda. He's got boobies now. There's a wild chase and a shootout. Brenda is hit several times, but still runs away. Gallagher shoots her a dozen times and then points a strange device at her. kind of a ray gun sort of thing. But rather than be captured, she says she won't come out and jumps off the roof instead. The police lieutenant's dog, investigates her dead body, but no people approach.
It wouldn't get into a dog, would it?
Well, we see the dog growling when it sees Gallagher. So, yep, I think that's what happened. Beck has seen enough to know something very strange is going on, and when Gallagher refuses to explain further, Beck orders his arrest. And they do a background check. Beck finds out that Lloyd Gallagher was actually killed in a forest fire a month ago. He's not who he says he is. Gallagher admits what's going on. There's an alien creature that moves from one body to another. It can only be killed when it's between bodies. His ray gun doesn't work on human flesh. He thinks that now it knows that he's after it, it'll come after him. He's been tracking it for 9 years, and now it's here on Earth. Well, Beck just thinks this is BS and locks him in a cell. Well, the police lieutenant, Masterson, comes to the station. That was the dog owner. And meanwhile, in the police lab, the technician finds Gallagher's weapon, and Masterson hears it fire. He takes the weapon from the guy and a shotgun, and he takes Beck hostage and starts shooting up the police station. Well, now believing the story, Beck lets Gallagher out of his cell, and it's moved into Willis, Beck's partner now. Willis is going after Senator Holt for some reason, and Willis goes in shooting, gets Beck twice in the stomach. Willis corners the senator after killing all his security, and then they find Willis dead, and the senator gives Gallagher a look as all his security walks him away. So, it's in the senator now. Well, the senator gives a press conference, and that's kind of funny because up to this point, the real senator had been coy about announcing, possible run for presidency, and the press asks, his agent that's standing at the podium, is the senator going to run? And she's like, oh, well, we haven't decided yet. The senator just stands up and says, I want to be president. He's the alien now. Well, Gallagher runs into the crowded room, and he's shot many times, but he keeps on going. He pulls out a flamethrower and blasts the senator right on stage. And the body is so damaged that the bug crawls out of the senator. Everyone sees it. Gallagher blasts it with his ray gun, and it explodes.
Okay, we know more press conferences like that.
Yeah, that was something. Well, at the hospital, Beck dies. But Gallagher is there and puts himself inside Beck. His true form is more like an energy beam, kind of light, more than the slug creature. But it's the same principle. He transfers himself to Beck's body, and Gallagher, now empty, dies, but Beck opens his eyes. And his wife and daughter come in, and he can continue as Beck.
He can go home and they can teach him how to eat properly.
Yeah.
Well, we know from early on that the perpetrator is an alien that takes over innocent people's bodies, but it's a long while before Gallagher explains it to Beck.
And then it still takes some convincing, too.
Yeah. Well, the special effects are pretty minimal. The bug creature is a stop-motion thing. It's more sci-fi police action than horror. But when you got bugs crawling in and out of people's mouth, it's certainly got a lot of body snatcher and alien invasion elements. So we're going to call it horror for this one.
Yep, I think we should.
So this was Sci-Fi 80s Week.
Uh-huh.
Over on horrorbulletin.com, we've also got a couple bonus films that really don't fit the pattern. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives.
Yep, he's
back again. Yes,
Despite being killed in the previous movies, he is still back again. Did you know
How
that he
does
keeps
he
coming
do
back?
that?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, it's kind of interesting how he comes back, so you should see that one.
Yeah. Magic, 1978, starring Anthony Hopkins, Anne Margaret, and Burgess Meredith, directed by Richard Attenborough.
And we're not going to talk about it, but I think that's actually my favorite of the week, of these 6.
I saw this right when it came out, and it bored me to death because I was too young for it.
Oh, I was fascinated.
Yeah, I liked it a lot
the
better
first
this
I saw it.
time.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out, too.
Let's see, if I was going to recommend one movie this week,
I would recommend Magic.
Humanoids from the Deep
Okay.
would be my favorite of the bunch.
I think
Magic is also very good. Yeah,
Magic's my favorite, and then after that would be Saturn 3.
Yeah, yeah. I like Evilspeak, but I honestly can't recommend it very much.
I liked them all. Yeah.
Okay.
I like The Hidden very much too. Yeah.
Oh, there was none of these that was really bad.
Yeah,
they were. I was entertained by all of them.
It was a week of entertainment.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so many movies from the 80s that we wouldn't have chosen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tune in next week where we're going to have, believe it or not, 5 movies and no short.
Huh. Interesting.
It's weird and twisted.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are we going to watch? We are going to watch, bringing it up.
This is the Pope's Exorcist week, isn't it?
It's in there.
Yeah.
We got The Offering, sort of a Jewish version of The Exorcist.
That was an interesting one.
Motion Detected, a sort of a smart home that goes bad.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Dead Rise. You've probably heard of it.
It's gotten a lot of hype.
The Pope's Exorcist. You've probably heard of it.
Also hyped.
And Renfield. You've probably heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also going to slip in a documentary there. The real guy that the Pope's Exorcist is based on.
The Devil and Father Amorth, a 2017 documentary about the true story of this exorcist. And it's got an actual, real, honest-to-God exorcism in it,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot less dramatic than the movie.
There's a lot less blood and, a lot less excitement.
See, our other bonus film next week is going to be Ennis Men. Enos Men. I'm not sure. ENYS. I don't.
Because we never hear it, so I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how you say it. I don't even know what it means after seeing the movie.
It's
the character's name is not Ennis,
and it's not.
I don't believe.
So.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was interesting. We'll talk about that next week.
Until then,
I'm Brian,
and I'm Kevin.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.